Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone that's joining us online. It's really good to see you. Thank you for your patience and waiting. And we're going to go ahead and get started on this week's Torah portion. And so those that are watching, that may be picking this up on the archive and say, "Who are we?" Well, my name's John Craig, and Sandi and myself, we pastor here at Life of Worship in Amarillo, Texas. And so if you're ever in the area and you're passing through and it's Shabbat, and we would love for you to stop by and join us. So you can go to our website and get all of our contact information there. We've got our email. We have our mailing address that's in there and all that fun stuff. So anyway, just wanted to mention that to anybody that's joining us online right yet. Those are good. It's all good. Hey, so I hope everybody's had a great week, by the way. It finally warmed up. We finally got some rain. What do y'all think about that rain? For 2 days of rain. It comes, it goes. It's like, but when it comes, it's like around here, it feels like it's very rare. It feels like a little bit, just an inkling, like what maybe they experienced in this week's Torah portion, where we have months, weeks and weeks and weeks of dry and no rain and no moisture. And then we got a break. We got a blessing. So anyway, rain is a blessing. This week's Torah portion, it's a good one. Miketz. And can somebody tell me what Miketz means?
Not me.
I don't know.
There's always the hint right at the very first verse of every Torah portion, and which is Genesis 41:1 through 44:17. So taken from the first few words of the beginning of the Torah portion, that's where we get the name. And so it says, now it happened at the end of. So at Miketz, at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. So there you go, at the end. Now, I want to ask you a question. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear at the end? First thing, come on. First.
Over.
Is your mind blank? What's it? It's over?
Over.
It's over.
What is it they used to say? Jerry used to say when the funny ended. That's all, folks.
Yeah, that's all, folks. Yeah, that's it. Okay, it's been a long time since I saw that, but yeah, that's funny. That's good. Yep. Yeah, I watched Saturday morning cartoons. I just want to let you know. Back in the day on network TV, I grew out of it eventually, but yeah, I love Saturday morning cartoons. And when I lived in Norway, we didn't have Saturday morning cartoons. So every time we came back on vacations, I really look forward to Saturday morning cartoons to catch everything from about 6:30 until 10, 10:30, 11. And then they started kind of, got boring. But yeah, that was what we did on Saturday mornings. Okay. What else? At the end, when you think, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Anybody in the chat, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? End of days. We've got, Joe says, end of days, right? Okay. So that's all, folks. I'm going to put it on the board. That's all, folks. And it's over. Yeah, so you kind of think about that. So this begins the Torah portion where Joseph it says at the end of 2 full years. So it's referring to 2 years, 2 more years went by. Joseph's in prison. And then Pharaoh has a dream. And it's very interesting to me that the dream, that there was a 2-year delay. Think about that. A 2-year delay.
There's a delay in everything. Everything the Bible does is there's a delay.
A delay. Yeah. So, I mean,
how long he waited for Isaac.
Yeah. And a lot of times, isn't it that there's a delay? Anybody ever go on a trip and it's just something happens right before the trip, and so it causes a delay. Remember when we had Sukkot. We were going to Sukkot, and then we had the whole issue trying to hook up your car to the RV, and I mean, how many times like we think we have everything ready, and it's like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to
use that pull for years, and everything was fine, and we went to go, and it wasn't even hooked up.
Yeah. So unexpected things. A lot of times people will say Murphy's Law, that we like to blame it on something as opposed to perhaps there's a message in the delay.
I think there's a message.
Yeah, Daryl.
I've heard of several instances where people were delayed that were in the church and brethren. And if they had left on time, they'd run right in the middle of a horrendous accident.
Yeah. You're exactly right. I shared that story one time where I was delayed, major wind day, and I was heading towards Claude. And had I left when I wanted to have left, I was delayed like by 10 minutes. And had I left 10 minutes earlier, I would have been in a major pileup where there was a major brownout from the dust. And it was just enough because the highway transportation was on the scene, redirecting traffic and just putting the cones out because of that accident that was right up ahead. I mean, maybe it was a 30-minute delay because there was enough time to get them out there to put the cones out, to redirect, and to take all the back roads around that area. So, yes, sir.
And something happened like that for me recently. I was driving down Level Street, getting ready to turn on Buchanan, go to the post office, center lane. I was going to take out. So this lady pulled in front of me and cut me off. And well, back in the day, I would have told her she was number one in my life. But now, as long as you don't run over me, I'm fine.
Oh, the one where they point to the sky. You know?
Anyway, she pulled up in front of me on 10th and Buchanan, and I made it a point to right, left before I pull through an intersection.
Yeah.
And if I'd been up front and done right, left, I would have been right into a 4-car pileup.
Oh my.
So either time or chance or hand of God, I'll take it.
It's exactly right. There's been many times where had it not been for that semi in front of me, I might have been going too fast for that highway patrol that was just a couple miles down with his radar or just coming in my direction. But the car in front of me was my governor because I had no governor. It had to slow me down. And now I try to do my best where I'm staying within a particular range, not too much over the speed limit.
God will bless you.
Yes, it's like so that God can preserve my money bag.
My kids will tell you that they grew up hearing, "Do not speak because you'll be out from under His grace."
I have heard that many, many times. In fact, my wife has reminded me, don't go out underneath the covering.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, but I used to speak all the time. I had hot rods, so
Yeah, when
I'd like to see how fast it goes. 150.
exactly. Exactly. I've rented some cars that I wanted to see what it could do. I had a Dodge Charger one time. Like, oh, that thing could move. That was nice.
I'm probably the,
I had a Toyota Tundra that I rented one time.
I'm
that
probably
thing
the
would
only
move.
One, maybe he did, got to drive the AMX, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I did.
Sweet, huh?
I just drove I drove his 57 Chevy,
I didn't get to drive that one.
the Grocery Gator.
Didn't get that one. I did drive a Rambler when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I was about 4 or 5.
I left the keys in it and in gear, sitting there on Lomita. And all of a sudden I looked out and Mike was going down the road just screaming and crying.
Sandy was in there too, so was Brenda.
They were all terrified because Mike was driving. And I had to catch that car and get in it and stop it.
I didn't see ball move so fast.
I don't think that was.
Oh my goodness. That's hilarious. All right. So this week's, so when we're thinking about Miketz at the end of, or that there's a delay or there's a reason for it, it's always to bring about a greater good. And by the way, I don't like that phrase, the greater good. Oh, we did this for the greater good. When it comes to the current vernacular used by the elite ruling parties over us, when they say this is for the greater good. Oh, lock yourself up, cover your face, stay so far apart. It's for the greater good. I don't like that phrase, but for Yah's kingdom, there was a greater good that was actually taking place, and it was for a revelation. What would have happened, for example, perhaps, just conjecturing, if Joseph was delayed? Was not delayed. What if when the baker was killed and the wine taster, the cupbearer had told Pharaoh, oh, there's this guy in prison. I just want you to know he's in prison right now. He told me the dream. You really need to let him out. What would have happened?
Well, God has backup plans, but his perfect plan was carried out.
Yeah, because he had to wait for the dream. So think about this. There were two dreams, and now, so two dreams, 2 years, thank you, Michael, and 2 more dreams. Now, do you think that there might be a message going on here? Hey, it's great to see you guys. Hey, is there a message here? There's 2 dreams. There's a delay of 2 years, and there's 2 more dreams. Okay. I know it's just at the beginning, but do we dig deep now, or do we wait? We have to go there, right? Anybody online? Anybody seeing a pattern going on here? The pattern is pretty obvious, but then do you see something else that seems to be what happens when you add these together?
I'm all right, Kelly.
Yeah, Amarillo is doing column adding now, and she's 5. So it gives us a number 6. Now the number 6, he's like, well, it has nothing to do with 2 dreams, 2 years, or 2 more dreams, but then perhaps we have a series of 2s that brings out a number 6, and which can also point to what when we have the number 6. What does number 6 point to? Man. What else does number 6 point to? $6,000 millenniums. What else does 6 point to? This number can go really crazy in a lot of different ways. So 6 is the number of man and beast, by the way. It also speaks about the 6th day. What happened on the 6th day? Creation of man and beast. What else do we have? What else does 6 remind you of? Anybody online, if you want to add to that? Eddie says, if you add the 2 years, you have 8, which equals new beginnings. New beginnings. So we do have that exposure as well. And we can also even look at as that in the fulfillment of the 1 week, it's fulfilled, ready to begin the 7, the rest. The rest. Well, so we're ready to begin the rest. Well, 7's related to rest. Okay, and then what does that relate to? Okay, think about this. Noah. Noah. Noah is related to rest because Noah means rest. And so then it takes us to the seventh millennium. Well, how do we get seventh? Because it's taking us to the rest. What happens with Joseph? Because the last set of dreams, 2 more dreams, have to do with the 7 years of abundance, the 7 years of famine. And so this tells us that there's more to come. And what does Joseph's name mean? Anybody? It has to do with bounty, abundance. Okay, yeah, that's right. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna do a cheat. I'm gonna do a cheat right now and pull up some more information on Joseph. Where are you, Joseph? Verse 25. And Joseph means let him add. Let him add. Yosef means let him add. So Joseph is now beginning to fulfill his name. Let him add. So as we start out this Torah portion, then now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. So there we go. This is how we start out. We have something that's at the end. It begins to show us something that's a lot more than what seems to be on the surface. And here is one other thing. Not only does it say why does it say 2 full years? Why do you think it says 2 full years? Because it could have just said at the end of 2 years. Because doesn't that mean pretty much the same thing? But it adds the word full. Full.
It kind of takes it from floating to outright.
So not one day too short, right?
Fullness means like, I don't know, like it's, complete here, yeah. Full.
Boy, I need my glasses to read that.
You want mine?
So it is a noon. I wanted to make sure. So the Hebrew word is shana. Shana or shana, and which means full, but it literally means it's related to the word year, and as a revolutionary time. In other words, that it is a whole age. Think about this, that the age has now been fulfilled. So Joseph's time as his whole age, the fullness of everything that God wanted to do in his life has now come to a full end in part 1. It's Act 1 is over. Now it's time for Act 2. Okay, go ahead.
So, this might be off the wall and not off at all, but, when Yeshua says that he fulfilled the law, the fullness, that's kind of what that reminds me of. It may not even be the same word, but because during his ministry, that's what he did. It was an age that he taught the true Torah, I guess. Does that make sense? Is there any connection to that? I don't know, it just made me think of that.
Yeah, no, I think there is. I think you certainly relate it to that. And I also have another phrase, that Shanathayim Yamim. is the Hebrew for 2 full years. Shanath Ayim, Yamim, which means 2 years of days, 2 years of days, or 2 complete solar revolutions. So I think that's pretty telling. And so that it's not too short. It's not too short. Delay. So to Joseph, it was a delay. To Yah, in Joseph's life, it's graduation day.
That's right, yeah.
He went through all of this for training. He wasn't ready until even 2 more years in prison. What? Even living in prison. I mean, he was living in prison, but even imprisoned, that there's a purpose. There's a plan. You know, we saw, as much as we didn't want to see Jonathan go through what he had to go through, is that there is a plan. And even still, he is still under the supervision of the state. There is a plan for that. Joseph came to the end of all of that at the completion of 2 years, at the fullness of 2 years, where 2 more dreams show up. But how did this all begin? Remember a couple of Torah portions back? Joseph has 2 dreams. So do you think there's something to our dreams, even that God speaks to us even in our dreams?
Yes.
And I would even go on to say, even the pizza dreams, I call them pizza dreams, those dreams where it's like, man, we had some big meal the night before, and that night there's just wild dreams. Do you think they're really just wild dreams, even though they happen because we ate too much? Do you think that there's something to dreams? But so now, as I think Eddie and Tammy put in there earlier, if you take that and you add all of those together, then you're back to the 8. 2 dreams, 2 years, and 2 more dreams. And then we have the 8, which is, again, the new beginnings, in the time of new beginnings. And it started with a dream, with 2 dreams. In the middle, there were 2 dreams. At the end, there were 2 dreams. Miketz, at the end. It's, in other words, the delay is over. It's over. That's all, folks. We're done with Act 1. We're going to Act 2. Anybody watch like the Hunger Games or Divergent or movies what are some other shows that are like that, where it's a series of movies? Star Wars, you have a series of movies, you get done with that one. Well, it seems like it's completed, but it's not completed. And there's more to the story. And that's where we're at. There's more to the story. And Joseph, whose name means let him add, there's another part to the story. John Wick. That's intense. Lord of the Rings, right? Okay. So, but we also see a connection to that is he has fulfilled the training purpose. He's fulfilled his apprenticeship, and now he's really come to this point. And how old is Joseph about this time? Does anybody have an idea how old Joseph might have been?
Probably around 33. 30. If he's an example of Christ, that's when Christ began.
I think, and Daryl, I think you're right. Because there's a series of 7 more years. Let's see. I want to say
He had the 7 years of plenty.
he had the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine even after that. So I want to say that he was either around 30, 32. It could have been even 34 because he went into captivity at age 17, and that he spent about as many years in captivity. And when he sees his brothers, he's close to age 40. So I want to say that it's possible that when he completed that time in prison, that he may have even been his age up to age 40. And Sandi had brought out something about how long is one considered to be a boy or in their youth, up to age, you had said 40.
Well, but it is also 30 is when you're an apprenticeship. I've read some sources that say 40, but at 30, then you can start working. But yes, bottom line is we consider youth we consider them adults way too early. For example, I was reading up on something where a 13-year-old boy did something terrible. They're wanting to put him with adults and try him as an adult. And I'm sorry, your reasoning doesn't even, you do not understand consequences. That side of your brain doesn't work till you're a minimum of 25 years old.
To be able to reason out even the right and
So,
wrong and
yeah,
all
what
that.
was done was terrible, but it's constant. I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah,
And
because
believers say, yes,
So
do that.
even 17-year-olds really and truly are not, and they do that all the time.
Mhm.
You know, if they're just right there at that 18 thing, it's just wrong.
yeah,
When
Yep.
you're 17 years old and you go out and kill somebody, you know what you did was wrong. You've been raised your whole life to know that's not right. So I can see the other side of it. You know?
so
I
they
still
may,
don't think-
That didn't give 17-year-olds the right to go out.
But
and
they
do
don't
what they wanna
understand the
do.
magnification that, no.
Sure they do.
You
They
don't
do.
get it when you're, no, I disagree with you.
I don't know about the age or when the age hit, but evil shows up.
evil does.
You know, I've seen my granddaughter lie and do things.
She's 5 years old. When I was 17, I knew I couldn't take a bath to somebody. I knew I couldn't shoot them. I knew I couldn't go rob a
Well,
store.
again,
I knew those were wrong.
Okay, and you know that at the age of 5, and you know that, or even earlier. But what I'm saying is, you don't understand the magnitude. That part of your brain isn't even developed.
So there's it's a very good point. I mean, we're told about all these things. We know that these things are wrong, and yet understanding or absorbing the full consequences of what it could actually mean. Does one deserve a full lifetime of punishment or execution as an adult if you did it at age
Okay,
13?
let's bring it home for a minute. Let's bring it home. We have somebody who's 22 years old that did something really stupid that has put him in a life sentence, happens to be our son. Did he know what happened? I mean, yes, but he didn't understand he didn't completely understand, nor did the counsel of others didn't help either, but you don't get it.
It's not fully
What I thought at
absorbed.
23 was completely different than how I thought and acted and reasoned even at 25 and 26 years old. I was a stupid 23-year-old. Stupid.
I think that was between a mother and a father.
Yeah, the difference between a mother and a father.
Little kid burns down the barn, the father would say, boy, why did you do such a stupid thing? The mother says, that's a dumb place to put a barn.
Or who let the matches down?
So
Yeah, I do that. I'm like, anyway, who let the matches down where that kid could get to them?
nowadays kids are allowed to watch TV that shows them that you can kill this guy today,
And there's
but
no,
tomorrow that same
Resurrect.
guy
I
is
do agree
alive.
with that.
Yeah.
So going back to here again, so we have here in the chat room, we've got Eddie and Tammy put in here. He was in Egypt for 22 years, and then there are 5 years remaining in the famine when he revealed himself to his brothers, and that he was 39. Where did I see the 39? Okay.
You know,
Yeah, he was 39 when the brothers first came.
When
Okay.
you read the story, you don't think of it,
Yeah.
Not 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's all drawn out, but the important thing is that we're looking at a pattern, we're looking at processes, and we're looking about things that he's having to go through, and there's also the connection that we have to look at. What is what is being revealed about Messiah? Because this is also prophetic, and so when we look at all of those things put together and we have that, then we say, okay, there's more to the story. Because when Messiah came the first time, there's two different thoughts. Wow, he was really delayed. And two, there's no way this could be him. Right? So when we look at that, Joseph, whose name let him add, is now living in that time where there's hope deferred. Hope deferred. I mean, think about this. What happens after the first week and there's no word from Pharaoh? After the dreams, after the cupbearer was released. Or now it's been a month. Well, surely the word is going to get to Pharaoh. I know he's a busy man. And then there's, 6 months and a year. It's like Pharaoh didn't get the message. How much longer am I going to languish in here? And then ultimately, now it's been, 2 more years. And he's going about taking care of the prison, fulfilling his job responsibilities that he's been given, and he's a prisoner. When all of a sudden he's told, shave, get cleaned up, you got to go see Pharaoh. Wow. Big thing. Yes, Daryl.
Looking at over the way God works with his people.
Yes.
Joseph was being tried. He was being humble. He was being getting ready to take over this job.
Yeah.
He didn't know exactly what it was, but he had faith to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. So all of a sudden, then he's lifted up and placed in this second most prominent role. Everything other than the throne was put under Joseph. Wow. I mean, think about the power of that. The very fact that Pharaoh would have known what his sentencing was about. And Pharaoh put him in charge of everything.
And quickly, it's not like he even gave him a little time. It was just like right there, okay, you have all this.
Yeah.
He didn't.
So could the word have actually come out even during the course of this time that maybe Joseph was falsely imprisoned? And that Pharaoh had enough confidence in this decision?
They say that in Jasher.
In Jasher?
They said something about the wife, the girl he was accused of.
The Potiphar's wife? Uh-huh.
Yeah, was found saying false against Joseph. In Jasher, I'm sure it's what it says.
Okay. See, I need to go back and look at that because it's been a long time since I've read about that. Yeah, Twyla.
Don't you think that Joseph had been through the being stolen or sold or whatever it was? He went through Potiphar's wife. He went through, and each place we're just suspecting that he probably had a close walk with the Lord by this time. Because how else could you have all these horrible things happen and not go insane? But he had the Lord working with him, and then just like that, and he probably wasn't real surprised.
So let me ask you this. I think you're making a really good point, because if there was no walk, would there have been any way that Joseph could have interpreted the baker or the cupbearer's dreams, let alone interpret Pharaoh's dreams?
Out of the words of his mouth, he said, "This is God. This is not me. This is God."
Yeah. So he gives.
I know it is at least twice.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's over in 41:32 where it says, "Now as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it about.
God,
You know, we get so caught up in hurry up.
Uh-huh.
it's our
And
lifestyle.
people that ask, I don't volunteer this, although I'm fixing to. I prayed for Jerry for 36 years before he came to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started telling me, you need to pray about this and you need to pray about that. And would you tell them my story and all this? I said, you're going to do this, you do it.
Yeah.
By this time, but when you are growing in those long years and they seem forever, you're also learning.
Yeah. So here we have something also that's very prophetic. We're talking about Messiah. So Joseph was in a place wearing the royal robe, was thrown into a pit. Yeshua, wearing the very garments of the high priest, was stripped of those garments. Joseph was stripped of those garments. Yeshua was executed and put into a grave, into a pit, so to speak. And he was brought out of that grave. Joseph twice. One, thrown into the well. Second time, thrown into prison. And then ultimately we see a resurrection. He's hidden away. Joseph is hidden away for how many years? And then he's brought out of the pit and put into a place of prominence. What does that speak to us regarding the Messiah?
He's patient.
Patient?
He's got a
He will do
plan.
things on his time and not on man's time.
Okay. Because think about,
Because if you ask Joseph, well, this is gonna happen, when do you want it to happen? He says, well, tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah.
And he would-
Get me out of here now.
He wouldn't have been ready. I wouldn't have been ready.
he went, yeah, okay.
Getting back to your deal you said earlier about the pizza dreams.
Uh-huh.
Something that I have noticed, and I could be totally wrong, but when you have what you call them pizza dreams, but I just call them scatterbrain dreams. I mean, you'll dream this, and it'll jump to this, and jump to that. And usually by noon that day, you'll forget what those dreams are about. But if you have a prophetic dream, it's like there's clarity to it. And you can ask somebody a week later, well, what happened on that dream? Well, this is what happened. This is it. They'll remember it. He plants that. And I think that's what you see right there on that dreams where he had the dreams. I think you're seeing that. These were what I call clarity dreams, prophetic dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason that there's a difference in those.
Yeah.
It's not, when you have those dreams, it's like God's in control of this. He's the one that's running the reel.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's not sending you these messages, you just dream here, yonder, and everywhere. I've had plenty of those, and then the next day you wake up and like, what was that all about?
Uh-huh.
That was weird.
Yeah.
And then by the next day you forget them.
Yeah. So,
I had warning dreams.
but think about that. When it comes to our dreams, and some people say, well, always have a notebook or a journal right next to your bed. So if you have a dream and you wake up, write it down so you don't forget it, because how many times are those dreams fleeting? And a lot of dreams happen right before you wake up, and so to remember those right away, because that's when your REM sleep is actually the best, is right before you wake up. Sometimes it's too deep, and then but that rapid eye movement type of sleep is right before you wake up, and there's some cycles of that as you go through the night as well. But so we should never discount our dreams. I think it's very important. Sometimes when we have dreams, they're so clear that that is actually the Father saying, I'm speaking to you, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you a snippet of a future event, and when you're there, you're going to know that I can still speak to you as well. That I'm opening up your ears, and that therefore I hear you and I'm speaking to you, and you're not that far from me. I think that's really important for us to really see. Don't you think Joseph felt distant from Yah, considering everything that he went through? It's like, what did I do? All I did was share my dreams. Well, maybe I said it in a way that it came across as arrogant before, but he didn't realize at 17 that he was coming across arrogantly. He just thought, wow, what did God tell me? I mean, when we came into Torah and we started sharing it with everybody, we're like, God's speaking to me about revealing something to me that is so amazing and powerful. And people are like, yeah, whatever. I'm pretty happy in my world, my little world. You don't touch my sacred cows. Yeah. Jackie, and then
When I've
Twyla.
had these dreams that the Lord was telling me something, they're different, even that they're like cinematic. They're like the ones I've had where he was telling me really, you have dreams, off and on all the time. But these were like cinematic. The color was more vibrant, and I woke up thinking about them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's told me about warring dreams. He's told me about just all sorts of stuff. I don't dream all the time, but I know he does that.
And by the way, just so you know, because there's a comment in here about not being able to remember dreams, and I. Oh, what's that?
He'll bring them back.
He'll bring them back if they're really important. You'll dream them multiple times.
Especially if you have them in threes. That's I had 3 cinematic dreams like this. He gave it to me 3 different times what was fixing to happen.
Yeah. So, and now this is just on a physical, biological level, is in terms of how our body operates, is 8 more good fats, like fish oil, things like that, because your brain needs good fats. Avocados, they have good fats in them, healthy fats in your brain. That's what energizes the brain, is the good fats. That's what gets in and nourishes the brain and causes those neural pathways to actually operate to their fullest capacity, so that even as you sleep, you'll find if you just take some fish oil, however you want to take it, and I'm not talking by the spoonful like our parents' generation took cod liver oil, but I'm talking about get some good oils that are full of those fats. You can get them in capsule form, and those will nourish the brain and give you amazing dreams, and that actually have more clarity. They're not so foggy. So just saying, it's just on a nutrient level, our brains need that. Yeah, Twyla.
This is kind of different. And at one time I was going to share it with the body, but I have to know about it at a different time now because of the time. So I'm going to just share this with you. But several years ago, Jerry's been gone 10 years, so somewhere maybe 5 years ago, I woke up in the night and I was having a heart attack. And my chest was so, that elephant was so big. And I was sitting there and I thought, I've got to get help. And the Father said to me, yeah, you can do that if that's what you need. But you see what that does. You've been living with that now for all these years. He says, you can just trust me if you'd rather. And knowing me and doctors, I went on to that. And I said, well, that's it. You're going to do it. When I went back to sleep, I was still having pain. It was not a, thou shalt move right this minute. But I had chose him rather than this, okay? So a couple, 3 years later, and he's bringing this all to me one night. A couple of 3 years later, my stomach fell through on my heart and stopped it beating and all this weird stuff. And they got in to fix it, the part of it. They thought it was all off, and it was 100% free. They said you will never have heart disease because all of your arteries are 100% free. So here, this evening, the night as I'm sitting here thinking these through, and I said, Father, you allowed me to have this big old weird stomach thing just so I can see what you did for me. and you bring it all together. Now it's a course of a number of years, but he was doing that so that I could, and then he reminded me of all of it so that
That's good.
I knew, you know, what had happened. So I think we just need to really get into it with our talker.
Yeah. And, you know, we say, well, everything has a reason, and it does have a reason, and we should never not think otherwise. And yet we don't always have the answers.
How do you know what the reason is?
Yeah. I mean, I can think of major events that have happened in my lifetime and things that I have experienced. And I think, why, you know, did this ever happen? You know, how, you know, when I'm following Yah with my whole heart and doing everything I know that is right, and then something hard hits, like going through when my first marriage ended, and it hit me so hard. I mean, it really threw me off. I'm like, how could this ever happen? Well, there in it was a purpose. Didn't have the answers to it, but over the course of years,
But you know who did.
yeah. And I just like, it's going to get resolved, and and God's going to work it out. I would have never met Sandi as a result. Things in my life would have never happened like it did as a result. Could God have worked it through on the other way? Yes, absolutely. But instead, it's about his purposes being fulfilled.
Right.
And the journey, he'll use whatever journey there is. Just think about that. The journey will fulfill his purposes, even though it won't happen like the way we've got it planned out, the way we want to do it. I was just talking to a friend of mine on Friday, and he was talking about how he was attending. He and his family attended a certain congregation in Lubbock, and a lady who had a gift of prophecy, who had come to their congregation, had prophesied over he and his wife, saying X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And then he saw a course of different things. He worked for me in Lubbock, and over the course of about 20 years, different things happen, and it's like, well, will it ever be fulfilled? You know, or is that word really from God? And now he was telling me he has partnered with a certain businessman here in Amarillo, and is actually, that dream is being fulfilled even now.
That's good.
And he's running a body shop, and he's partners in the body shop, and it's a brand new body shop here in town. And it's like, I've stayed in touch with him over all these years. I've known the different things, the different jobs that he's had. I worked for him for a year, of all things, 10 years ago. So when you think about the course of different things, you see, wow, you know, God is doing something there. He gave a vision, and fulfilling that purpose was not the way he thought, but it was when the time was fulfilled, he was ready to enter into the partnership that was once prophesied over him. So, yeah, so it's really cool how God does that in our lives. And the process is for discernment. The process is for us to hope. The process is for us not to give up. The process is for us to walk. It's the halak. It's the walking it out in the presence of God. Yes.
I've heard this said, and I don't have a dog in this thing, so that God doesn't give us circumstances. He watches us react to circumstances.
I would tend to agree with that.
You know, I think that's good. You know, how many times do we go around the mountain because we don't react the right way to circumstances, and we face different circumstances? You know, can we say that about Joseph? No, the text doesn't give us that, but we see a fulfillment. We see a process, and we see that there was a plan, because Joseph was used for the salvation of the world. Think about that.
So people
It-
wouldn't starve and.
The salvation, when I say the salvation, it was to preserve
Yes,
his
that is-
family, which is ultimately the tribes of Israel, and the secondary is the world. So, and not saying that the world was any less important, but there is a purpose in fulfilling God's plan so that there would be an Israel to bring out of Egypt back to the promised land.
And he also tells us these things, and the more that he does it, the more you catch on that's him. He does it also to say, I'm right here.
Yeah.
You know, you gonna believe what I tell you or not?
So,
Right here.
so in the fullness of time, it had to be fulfilled. There had to be a fullness. There wasn't time for them to take over the land in Israel. In fact, they need to be removed from Israel in order for that the sins of the Amorite would be fulfilled. It was going to take a number of more years so that what the Amorites did, what the Canaanites were doing in the land was so atrocious that it needed to be purged, and justly purged. And Jacob, Israel, had to be removed from the land in order for it to get there. Because think about this, how many times do we have a stabilizing effect on our work environment, on our families, in our communities because of our faith? And if our faith isn't there, where will that community go? And think it's like, well, I don't have any influence in this. Even if we have no direct, we don't get involved in city government. We're not involved in the city councils, the county councils, or anything like that. We don't have a political thing. We're not involved in the school system because our kids are all grown up or whatever. Even by the fact that we even meet here and we still pursue and we have that relationship, we are a stabilizing factor
That's
in
right.
our culture, in our community that we're living in, just because we do walk this thing out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe some of my question was, I wonder why Egypt didn't follow more closely to the Lord with him in charge. But, you know, it took a while, but then they finally forgot, which we do because he wasn't there anymore. He didn't have that influence.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder what they were like when he was there over it, you know, if it was a more stabilized, how many people came to the Father because of him being there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be that those multitudes that left with Israel, maybe those were remnants of that, you know, you change your DNA,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe those people were from that,
Maybe.
maybe from Joseph.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The influence of Joseph's faith, you know, there was a stabilizing factor, but then there came a Pharaoh that knew not Joseph.
Right.
And so at a certain point in time, if the legacy, so think about this, how big was Israel by the time that new Pharaoh came around? There was a lot, right? Up to as much as maybe 4 million people that came out, along with a bunch of others that came out of Egypt. We don't know how many of the other people that came with them. And so, but maybe a total of maybe 4 million people out there in the wilderness. At a certain point in time, it was no longer a stabilizing force in Egypt. And a type of anti-Messiah was ruling the land. And so what does God do when it's so evil? He brings the people out in order to bring about judgment upon that nation.
Washes that filth away.
Yeah. Yeah. So he preserves. Think about this. There's always a remnant. There's always a remnant that's removed. So if the remnant is in other words, when Hasatan is and the kingdom of darkness has become so dark, because it was only in when it comes to the plagues, the light was only in the homes of the Hebrews, right? And the rest of the land was dark. It's very ominous feeling. And you think about that, a darkness that you can feel. We've talked about that many times. And when when the darkness has so crushed in, then Yah says, okay, now you're going to see my redemption. Well, I think, in my opinion, in our land, are we there?
Yes.
Is the darkness becoming so big?
Yes.
And it's not yet.
But But it's here.
You just have
It's
to,
here.
you just have to pay attention to it. Notice it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's just
everyone I've
midrash.
talked to, non-believers and stuff like that, they know something's going on.
Yeah.
They do.
And
Yeah.
and they just can't quite figure out what it is.
Can't put their
And I
finger
think that the people, the believers are doing what they're supposed to be doing are shielded from it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know how I read over there in 4 Ezra? So how are we preserved? By and I had read by our faith and by our works. So it ties us back to Torah. It ties us to our belief system. But that word faith, and I was doing some more studying on this, and that word faith goes back to the word emunah, which is our faithfulness or our loyalty. So our loyalty, how do you determine loyalty to the kingdom? It's by how we follow the protocols. So where our loyalty to our king is by our walk. So those two must work together. They can't be separated. They
We must
work
join.
together. And so in 4 Ezra chapter 9, when it talks about that, is when there's great turmoil among the people and earthquakes, there are a remnant that are preserved. And that was a promise. And so we hold on to that promise, though, in spite of everything, a global event of great turmoil and great geological uproar, shall we say. So among the people and the earth, both are in turmoil.
Yes.
And yet there's the remnant. Yes, I agree. People feel it everywhere. They feel that you say, well, in America, is there a way to preserve America? We love our nation, and those that are watching us online, you understand America's been the beacon of the world. Is the preservation comes through that word, like you were saying, and that preservation. But is there a way to bring us back to where it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago? I don't think we'll ever see that America again.
Well,
But on the other side, why do we need these things? Because we have to, we, as I've said many, many times, where in that promise in 4 Ezra chapter 9, it's because the land is the promise that we will be removed and preserved in the land. There's no other place in the world that's called the land other than the land of Israel that's in turmoil right now. So all of this has to take place. We have to watch it and we have to see it. And so there is a word in here in Genesis 41:32, and it says, for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It was doubled unto the word shana. It was duplicated twice, and that word is pa'uma, or pa'am. And literally it means to a stroke. So it was doubled unto Pharaoh twice, like hitting the anvil with the hammer. I have to do it left hand because I can do it left hand, not so much right hand. Okay. Struck twice. In other words, when you strike an anvil, do you hit it? Is it just a tap, or do you strike that thing?
strike it.
The dream was hit twice.
Yes.
So this is really, really important. And it's talking about a preservation of the people and what it means to, you're going to have to preserve the people. Now there's a process, but it's hit twice. In other words, look, once a very significant thing will happen in the future. The Messiah ben Yosef, strong hit of the anvil, and then a return of Yeshua the Messiah ben David, who's coming back as king, a very strong hit of the anvil. 2 dreams, 2 more dreams, 2 more dreams. At the end of the fullness of 2 years, speaking about something that's related to man that brings about new beginnings. And we see that here in this Torah portion. It's telling us that at the end of that time comes rest. 7 days, 7 years of abundance, 7 years of famine, but in it is rest. In other words, you're not working even in the time of famine because we did what we're supposed to do. Even when it seems like the world is so bleak, we've done everything that we can possibly do because the 7 speaks of rest. That rest is preserved. It is a time. If we keep the 7th day on the 8th day or the 1st day, will we ever enter into that rest? No, because we doubt. It says in Hebrews, we will never enter into that rest. Why did they not enter into that rest? According to Hebrews chapter 3, 4, is because of unbelief. Unbelief. They didn't believe in the 7th day rest. They didn't believe in the 7th millennium. They didn't believe. And so what does Luke tell us in Luke 21? Why were the people not preserved? Because they were caught up with the cares of life and the worries of life. They were so caught up because those things were so big. I mean, I was thinking about this, and I think I gave testimony to this the other day, is maybe a couple weeks ago, and talking about, all right, there was a lot more even week left than what my last commission check covered. And it was like, well, there's nothing there. I mean, I don't even know how to buy gas to do my job. And it was just like, well, you know what? I can sit here and worry and be anxious about it every single day. Or, you know what? There's a lot more than what's in my bank account that I'm supposed to enjoy in life. So why is this really destroying my joy where all I'm doing is looking to the future? Why do I look to the future? Why am I always looking to the future? Why are we always looking like, okay, next paycheck, I can do this. Next check. Why am I always looking to that as opposed to living in the fullness of life that God's given me? Yeah. Why is that allowed to take my joy? Yeah. So therefore, I should live no matter what's in my bank account because the expression of my life is in my relationship with the Lord, not based on the circumstances of my life, even though they loom very big. How do you think Joseph could have survived that time in prison?
No, he couldn't have
if he didn't know that when the end was going to come, then he's going to have to live it to its fullness. He has to find joy outside of what was encapturing him, putting him into that box. Are we going to live in the box, or are we going to live to our fullness and say, well, that's just part of my experience right now. But you know what? My hand is in my circumstances are in God's hands.
That's right.
And how I experience the fullness of that rest is based on my response to this place that he's called me to live. Yeah.
So there's a cartoon, Joseph, kind of like the other one, Prince of Egypt or whatever. And that makes me think of the way they portrayed him in prison is that he had there was a crack in the rocks, I guess it was put together, and a little tree came up, or a little plant came up. And it just so happened that the sun just came right there, and so Joseph started watering that plant. And by the time he left, it was a big plant, by the time they came and got him. So I think that kind of shows that he did find something in the dregs. It did not show him being over the prison, but, it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
So, but I thought that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Rick.
So, if you went to any church around, whether they're meeting today or whether they're meeting on Sunday, and you go up and stand before the people there and say, "Are we the bride?" then you're going to get an overwhelming response. So I guess the question that I have is, let's say that we are on the right track, that we're holding service on the right Shabbat. All those people that are doing that, my parents was probably in there, yours and everything.
Yeah.
Are they going to find grace that he's saying, well, you just didn't know. You wasn't, you know, this was what you were told. And so I guess what I'm getting at is, are they going to have the possibility of being a bride even though they're doing that wrong? It's just, there are good people in every church
Mhm.
that probably do better than I do.
Mhm.
That, you know, they, even in these hard times that we have and these dark days that are cast upon our nation, that what I gather is like when Abraham says, if I can find 10 righteous men,
Mhm.
will you spare this city? And that's what I keep thinking with the hard times that are coming and everything. I believe I can find 10 righteous men in Amarillo. And, you know, are we going to have a blessing during this end times when the times come upon us that it talks about the Antichrist coming and everything like that? There's still going to be righteous people that have not taken their eye off of him,
Mhm.
that still know this, right? Even if they're meeting on a Thursday and we're meeting on a Saturday, I mean, he's going to see their heart,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I can address it, but Will, what are you saying?
Isn't that gonna fall on the shoulders of people that intentionally misled those congregations and all that, right?
I think that's a really good question too, because the shepherds that lead the people astray, yeah, because the shepherds should know.
Yeah.
Just like Yeshua is talking about the blind leading the blind, and they'll fall in, they're going to go right into a ditch. So it's very important to understand that. So are the people held accountable because they should have known better, and the pastors should have known better? And so that's a good question. But we also have to look at, not everyone's the bride, but at the wedding feast, there is the bride, and there's the wedding guest, and there's the servants. And then those that are outside weeping in the place of weeping and gnashing their teeth. So I would have to say is that the bride, that place as the bride is has to be somebody that's equally yoked with Yeshua. So if because everybody has the ability to read, that everybody has the same Holy Spirit to open up their mind and to teach them, and if they really love the truth, then I believe, and I'm not even saying that those people don't love the truth, but there is a certain amount of programming that has to be broken. And how that comes about, did they listen when the Father was giving them an opportunity to break that programming, and then they chose not to, and they because it didn't feel comfortable to them, and therefore they continued with those traditions, and so those traditions held them into captivity? Well, then does that give them the eligibility to be a bride? It doesn't mean that they're not a wedding guest, because they truly love. Even as Sandi brought out on a message quite a while back, and she was talking about there's the bride and there's the concubine. Well, the concubine doesn't get the same privileges as the bride, but there is a certain amount of intimacy that takes place, but she's not the bride. And so I would have to say that when we look, even what I've been going over there in 4 Ezra, but we don't have to go to even those pseudo-apocrypha books. And they say pseudo. I really think pseudo is really the wrong name for those books. They're just Second Temple writings. But we can go back to the 7 assemblies in the book of Revelation, knowing that there's one assembly that there's no tribulation that's discussed, and that's Philadelphia. The others, they do go through a time of some type of tribulation.
They have a good thing, but then they also have the.
Yeah, but I have these against you, and they're given the opportunity to clean up their act. Every one of them, I have this against you, but I love this about you. But so if I have these things against you, then come to know what that means. What does that mean? Study it out. We are to be like the Bereans that took that word and say, well, is it true? Is it true? All these people we share Torah with, Shabbat with, feast days with, it's no longer our responsibility. We planted a seed, and did they go out to discover it on their own, or were the traditions so strong in their lives that it was too difficult to break? They've got too many friends that are still in that group. They don't want to leave their friends. They got, what will their family think if they don't put up a Christmas tree and celebrate Christmas? But what about the gift sharing, the feelings of the memories of that day? How do we even replace it? I think we all went through that. To us, to give up Christmas was not a big deal, but there was this thing like, but it was a special day of family gathering, but we understood that all of a sudden now there's 7 more feasts plus that we can use to celebrate and to gather and to be part. It's like, well, why would I settle for 1 or maybe 2 if you add Easter? And yet, why would I even settle for that? And when we can say, wait a minute. And some people have gone as far as celebrating a high satanic day as Halloween, as saying, well, this is a big family tradition thing that we do, in order to substitute and say, but why can't we celebrate Passover and unleavened bread and first fruits and Shavuot and trumpets and atonement and Sukkot? I mean, magnificent days of celebration and gathering and family. And yet, because we were programmed, we have to break the programming. We were programmed to, why is the programming so strong? Because the delusion has been going on for 2,000 years, since the 3rd century. So not quite 2,000 years, but the programming is so strong, it has to be broken. But only when we really love Yeshua to the point of we're going to do what Yeshua did, that, why did that phrase even come out? What would Yeshua do? What would Jesus do? WWJD. Remember back in the 90s when that was such a big popular thing? Well, what did he do? He healed the sick and he raised the dead. That's what we always wanted to focus on. He loved one another. But what did he do? Yeah. He showed up at all the feasts. He did that. And then we think, well, so it was even in the catchy marketing gimmicks, God has given us so many opportunities to say, what more did he do? When I first became a believer, I said, why aren't we more like the 1st century church? Why weren't we like the 1st century?
Yes.
And it's been a lifelong pursuit. But eventually the programming got broken, but I had to go through a period like Joseph. I had to go through a period by which I had to find myself, I had to be found faithful. We remember that song we sing. It could be broken down all the way to the point of all these layers in my life had to be worked out. Those foundations had to be laid to where I got to the point where, we started keeping the feast days. We gave up Christmas. We gave up Easter. We kept Shabbat, and those layers were laid. Everybody has to go on their own. Joseph's journey was not for the other brothers, the 11 brothers.
See, all this is her fault. She kept leading me this way.
It's all Joy's fault.
No.
It's when Joy came and she was like, I got to get out of here on that first stage, and Sandi went up to you, like, hi, so glad to meet the mom of these two great daughters. And wouldn't you kept coming back.
Yes, because you know the truth. Also, you know, you got to look at it like this, and this may sound hard, but there's no pain, suffering, and where we're going to be. And when we die, there's no pain and suffering. That's what Scripture says. You got to just know that you can't save everybody. You are not God, even in your family. You have to let that go. Now, if he sets something up and you want to get bold, go ahead. You know, but the Bible, he said, people are going to hate you because of me. You're going to lose people because of me. You have to come to grips with that and let them go and let him work. And, you know, Torah is very important. It's like I have this argument with a couple of people. The church is so big, there's so thousands in the church. What your little church, you know what? If there's thousands, what you know, maybe you, I said, the remnant, you throw remnant in their face and they do not get it. Remnant is a, well, there's probably trillions and millions, but in the grasp of things, the trillion, whatever the largest number is,
Mm-hmm.
there is still a remnant, a remnant that's going to go through.
Uh-huh.
You know, you're going to go through that hole, okay? If you are doing Torah. Yes,
The narrow road. It is.
So, you know, you got to let him have it.
That's yeah. And now, Twyla, let me ask you a question. What is a remnant? Because you have seamstress skills. What is a remnant?
A remnant's the piece that's left.
The piece that's left.
See?
Not taken, but left.
Yeah.
The piece that, yeah,
It's left.
that's left. How so you can have a bolt of fabric, and it's the part that you don't have enough to make anything else out of, but it's still good.
Now, I have little bitty girl clothes,
Uh-huh.
little dolls. And that's what I can make is my doll equipment. I can make things for little girls to play with.
Uh-huh.
dolls and things.
Uh-huh.
And the big thing that we all have to remember, I'm speaking here, yes or no. It's like Sandi says all the time. If you're looking for an excuse, there's a dozen on
Come
every
on.
corner. But you've got to come to the point where you say you, yes for you.
Uh-huh.
She can't say yes for you. I can't
Yes.
say yes
Right.
for
They're
you.
just saying yes, Lord, but yes, Yehovah, you know, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You better worry
Daryl.
about your own soul.
Well, being human, we always try to overthink things. And it's really simple. We don't have to worry about it. God knows who his people are.
Mhm.
What's on the heart. He knows who to judge, who to take,
Mhm.
who not
Aren't we glad we're not God?
to. We do it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, look at all the people that have to put their comments on the local sheriff's Facebook whenever they have new mugshots put up. Just look at their ugly thoughts. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. You don't know if those guys had to plea because they can't afford defense and they might be completely innocent. 600 people have gone through injustice because of a January event. Yeah. Okay. Rick.
Okay, about a week ago, I had a chance to sit down with a very nice young couple, and I must say that she did about this much of the talking, and he did the rest. And they're good Christian people. Yeah, and I visited with them there probably for about an hour and got to tell them about a lot of different stuff, about the feast days.
Mhm.
And when Yeshua was probably actually born and why we shouldn't do the Christmas, and that we as a church met on Saturday on the Sabbath.
Mhm.
And this went along fine until he revealed, well, yeah, but that part, that Old Testament stuff was nailed to the cross.
Mhm.
Then he proceeded about 5 different
Yeah,
times to, I mean, he could not get past that. Oh no, that was nailed to the cross. And I was like, well, you know, when Yeshua was here, there was no New Testament. So you're saying that from the New Testament is something that was not there, but you want to keep bringing that into the trial there, you know?
Mhm.
And
What they don't understand is it wasn't the Torah it was the spirit of death. It was I don't know how to explain it. Steve Mitry has got one that's called Nailed to the Cross.
Mhm.
I would suggest everybody listen to it. It's really good the way he does it. I cannot remember now. I need to listen to it again, but I need you to listen to that because it's really good. And it's not real long.
Mhm.
But
My question is, and I couldn't remember this on Walking in Spirit and Truth on Tuesday night. I was trying to remember that the words, not only does the word, it can't add to or take away from it. In other words,
Right.
you can't insert or delete from the
Right,
word.
right.
But even more so, because what you're saying is people have say by what you're saying is that, yes, that's the Old Testament. It expired. They put an expiration
So
on
they're
it.
putting
When
Old
Yeshua
Testament
came,
is
it all
expired.
expired because
That's-
the prophecies of the Old Testament have been fulfilled. So now it's expired, and now we have the New Testament. But that's saying I'm inserting and I'm deleting a dogma
Yes.
that was come after the first century. So getting into the second century that led up to the third century, they prohibited the things of the scripture on penalty of death. Now, if that tradition of penalty of death continues to be handed down to generation, to the point it is completely taught out of people, then every generation after that no longer even remembers, then it takes a revelation of God to break that programming that has been handed down from generation to generation to generation. And who are we to say that any of it ever expired when God himself said you're under a curse if you add to or take away from it? Or you said some of it expires.
Somewhere in that Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, if God's working through you. Yeah. Yeah. So
Somewhere in that Bible, there was a teacher, trying to remember his name, that said something about like, I'm God, I change not. I'm the same yesterday, I'm the same today, and I'm the same tomorrow.
Mhm.
Then that's what I was trying to get to them, that,
Mhm.
you know, if he said it changed not, then you're saying that it was nailed to the cross, which, you know, I never could get him past that. Oh, well, that's nailed to the cross.
Mhm.
And it says there in the New Testament that they met on a Sunday. And I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, but
Well,
that's just a carryover.
it's
a
carryover.
The day ended at like at 6 o'clock, and they
Mhm.
just keep going.
Yeah.
So here's the thing is what he said is you plant a seed. So, you tend to want to dwell on those things, but you've planted the seed. And so hopefully that'll come back to you someday
So
stronger or whatever. So that's really good.
So think about this. Remember the testimony that Sandi gives about going to ORU, and she was at an Oral Roberts chapel, and they were doing a healing line. People that need prayer, or a question answer period with Oral Roberts, who we know had a big healing ministry, and they said, well, what happens if you pray for somebody and they don't get healed? And Oral Roberts said, next. So what happens if they don't get it? Well, next.
We gotta look at this
Because there's
one.
plenty of people out there.
Yes.
And here's something else. Why not just say this?
You
Well,
don't want it, perfect.
and pray, Father, bring about the divine appointments for those that are closest to
Yes.
eternity.
Very good.
There you go.
Okay?
Mhm.
Because the key thing is maybe they're closest to eternity in terms of coming to Torah. Maybe they're closest to eternity because they're going to die and they need
Yes.
Yeshua.
And that, yeah. Yeah, we
And
had 'em in here.
and either way, let's get them into the feast. At
Yes.
least get them into the
Yes.
feast, because I mean, this is a lifetime
We're all
that
going
we are
sometime.
we don't know when our next day is.
Right, we're all going sometime.
Yeah, Michael.
How many times does it say in the Bible that that God and Jesus are forever,
Mhm.
never failing, never faulting, but are always going to be there forever? I don't know how many times it says that, but it says it over and over and over again. He does not have an expiration date.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know where these people are coming up with their expiration date. It's sort of silly if they read the Bible, if they've even read the Bible.
Yeah.
They read it over and over again.
Mainly to the cross, so
Uh-huh.
you don't have to pay attention to
It's
the
forever.
first half.
Yeah. So
Lasting.
yeah, and that's where Paul in his letter to Timothy is saying is that people hold to a form of godliness but deny its power. And then that's part of it is that they say, well, I'm not denying healing or prophecy or anything like that. Well, but they're denying the power of the continuous word.
Yes.
And that is really, why do we study Torah? Because these are the foundations that allow us to understand everything else. Will.
It also goes back to the fact that there's different expectations for different people.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a different path than I do.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And the thing is, and I think another good argument, and I think I brought this up on Tuesday in walking, and it has to do with if we're being deprogrammed in regards to even how we've been lied to, the media lies to, our government lies to us, all this sort of stuff. And a lot of people have woken up because of the big biological warfare that was put out against people. And people came to the realization, what, our government really isn't telling us the truth? And that was their first awakening. But the very fact that we've come to understand that there's a lot more, that we can say, well, guess what? It's also happened in what we believe. What we've been taught to believe has also been disinformation. They've been lies handed down from our fathers, and we don't want to accept that those truths are being withheld from us. And so therefore, yeah, that's another approach, by the way, is that, okay, is 9/11, did the government story on 9/11, is that real? Is everything about Russian collusion real? Is everything they told us about the jabs real or not real? Okay, what about faith then? Is everything that we've been told and handed down since the time of Constantine through the Catholic Church, the Universal Church? There's a reason why it's called Universal Church, because of they took every religion in under them. And the Protestants still holding to the very celebration days of that. Okay, true. Is it real or not real? True or untrue? And so I don't know. It's just an idea again. So. And then, but I wanted to bring something else up. And by the way, Terry, it's good to see you online. We miss you a lot.
Hey, Terry.
And she said that please keep me in your prayers. I've not been feeling well. And she says that she's blessed and not cursed. She says, my head feels like it's going to explode and chest always feels like it's getting tight. So, Father, we come before you right now in the name of Yeshua, and we just lift up to you, Terry, and that, Father, we ask that your peace and your shalom would be upon her, and that you would just, where there's nothing missing, nothing broken, fullness, wholeness, and completeness, that you would remove and touch her right now so that the tightness that she feels in her chest and the pressure that she's feeling in her head, that, Father, that you would bring immediate relief, and touch her right now, that by the stripes of Yeshua, Terry is healed. And so, Father, just minister to her and touch her right now in the name of Yeshua. And Father, we thank you that that your work in her is above anything that what the medical can do and technology can do.
That's right.
Because your work is a perfect work. And it is a complete work, and your word does not return to you void. And so, Father, we just thank you for touching her and ministering to her in the name of Yeshua. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. I want to go back over here to chapter 41, verse 32, and Joy, did you have your hand up? Were you going to say something? I didn't mean to.
It's okay.
You're
What
what?
I was just gonna say is Melissa teaches that, and I know she's got Bible verses to support it, but, in the millennium, we're gonna be learning Torah. I mean, that's what we're gonna be there for, is to learn Torah. And she said, you know, when I get there, I don't wanna be in a remedial class. She said, I'd like to be up a little bit higher, so let's learn it now so that when we get there, we can move on further.
Yeah.
So she said,
Melissa,
We can be
both of
teachers'
her last two
oh.
teachings have been,
Or which
well, it's 3 men and a red
Yes,
one.
that was so good.
There's two of them, and they're very, very
It
good.
was Hanukkah she was at Bill Clouds, and it was her teaching, 3 wise men and one red man or something.
Yeah.
One red one.
Yeah, and it's 2
So
episodes.
good, so good,
So,
very good.
Where are you at? What's
Genesis chapter 41,
41? I thought you said 31. 41 what?
verse 32.
Thank you.
So, and it says, and for, this is out of the King James, and for that the dream was doubled unto you, Pharaoh, twice. It is because the thing is established by Yah, and Yah, or God, or El is actually the word, El will shortly, or Elohim will shortly bring it to pass. Now, there's a couple different things. We have the doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It seems redundant, doesn't it? Okay, again, we're going back to the twos. Going back to the twos, there's a reason the twos, it has a messianic fulfillment
Yes.
in it, as well as what's happening in contemporarily with Joseph and the people there in Egypt, and ultimately his brothers. And then we also, it says the dream was doubled in Pharaoh twice, striking it. In other words, boom, this is really established thing. It's not like, okay, we'll take it for whatever you will, we'll just see what happens type of thing. He says, no, you're going to pay attention. And then it says it is because the thing. Now, all right, in American 21st century word thing, what does that mean? I mean, the thing is established by Yah. The thing is established by Elohim. You know what that word is? Debar, which is a word or a matter. In other words, God has given a word. It's established twice. In other words, it's been given as a dream twice. And how many times was that dream repeated? Pharaoh had the dream, and we have that description. And then Joseph hears the dream, both dreams. So it's the dream is doubled by the two stories, and it's repeated again. So it's not just the same matter discussed twice in the dream form of the dreams, but then it's told twice.
Established.
And so now this word is a matter. It's an affair. It is going into effect. These are all meanings of debar. It has been decreed that it is so. It is, and it is established. And the word established by God. So the word is established by Elohim, means that it is completely firm, established, fitted, fixed. It is going to happen. And it is about preparation to prepare for a provision or make provision. This thing is like, it's not only an exclamation point, it is a triple exclamation point. It's like, is there an expiration date to the word? No. Exclamation point. There is absolutely no expiration date. In other words, you must take action on it right now.
Yes.
Okay. And then it goes on. It's established by Elohim, and Elohim will shortly bring it to pass.
Amen.
And that word is asah. And ultimately it means, and Yah will make it so. He will make it so.
How do you spell that? Assault.
Asah, phonetically spelt, it is Asah,
Thank you.
Asah. And now, how much of this is when you have something that's talked about twice in Scripture, you pay attention. Now, these dreams, both dreams mean the same thing, and it's repeated twice. Pharaoh tells it twice. So he also says he gave it to all of his wise men in Egypt, and none of them could interpret it. But we don't have that written out for us within Scripture. But it's told. He tells it once, and then he didn't keep bringing in the people and keep telling it over and over and over again. Maybe he did. I don't know. But it's told once, and then it's told to Joseph. And I believe with that is also to say there's more meaning than for the huge time of abundance and famine, but in reality for the day, and that it's talking about a time in the future. So we have a messianic meaning of Messiah ben Yosef, Messiah, the son of Joseph, or likened unto Joseph, the servant king, and yet a coming of a king that was going to rule and reign like David, a military leader. We have that type of picture. But what about Pharaoh? Do we have a picture of a type and shadow of a Pharaoh?
Who would that be?
Okay, so think about this. When we've been told about the Antichrist or anti-Messiah that is to rule and reign in the world, we have been taught about a guy that is inhabited by Lucifer himself, right?
Mhm.
I mean, literally, that's the time. And you think, well, did you know that it wasn't for 1,000 years from the written Torah, for 1,000 years, that the adversary Hasatan was ever mentioned? So there is an adversary that we see in Pharaoh in the time of Exodus, that we see as an adversary against Israel, but we are not told about an entity for 1,000 years. I don't know exactly. But the adversary is actually talked about in the Second Temple writings that we are coming to understand more about, and how that was an influence upon the first century believers. So if you think about an adversary that comes in the form of Pharaoh, Pharaoh rules with a strong hand, but does Joseph operating with Pharaoh, if Pharaoh, there's a type and shadow of the Father and the Son that we see with Pharaoh and Joseph, but we also see a picture of a very benevolent Pharaoh. Because in Exodus, Pharaoh that did not know Joseph comes along, and he's not very benevolent, is he? He's much like the son of Solomon, who comes to rule and reign, and his advisors say, what? Increase their taxes, increase, because they don't want, that's how you're going to keep the people under control. You've got to oppress them more. That son of Solomon is much like that. But think about the fact that many people will embrace the anti-Messiah is because he's first going to show up in a very benevolent type of peacekeeping type of character, yet he's double-natured. There's those twos again.
Just thought that Pharaoh grew fat and prosperous because of what He didn't mean it. I am rich and I have need of nothing.
I am rich and I have need of nothing. Kind of like Nebuchadnezzar. And he was, for 7 years, what happened to him? He was struck on the same day, and he ate grass like the livestock. Lost his mind, insane for 7 years. So that's kind of that's a whole nother track, right? That's another rabbit hole we could go down. So I think that this is kind of interesting because I think verse 32 is very, very powerful. And the next follow-up verse is powerful too. It says, now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. And let Pharaoh do this and let him appoint officers over the land and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. So it goes on from there. So, but I want to jump to something that is also very interesting because the brothers show up and, their father rebuked them saying, why did you even tell them that we've got a brother still at home? Why did you even, Jacob said, why did you even tell him about this other one? Because I don't want to lose another son. And now you're saying that you got to take him to verify the story. And where's Shimon? Where is he? He's in prison. So when the brothers show up, what does Joseph do to them the first?
He scares them.
He's pretty harsh. He throws them in the pit.
Yeah, he scares them.
For 3 days. That's going to change someone's perspective pretty quick. And then they send them without. In fact, Joseph, I don't even know how he does this because now he pulls them out. He says, okay, I'm going to send you back. But as a ransom, that you're going to come back and show me that you're not lying to me and bring your other brother with you. I'm going to put this brother in. Why did he pick Shimon, Simon, Simeon? Why did he pick him?
Didn't he at the first do something to him?
I don't know.
Wasn't he the one that didn't let him kill him?
Yeah, that was Reuben.
That was Reuben. Yeah.
And then Judah stepped in as well.
So was it Simeon that was one of the ones that wanted to kill him?
I think so.
Probably.
And they waited a long time, by the way. They waited a really long time before they came back to Egypt with Benjamin. Simeon was in there for a long time. It could have been many months because they say that they could have gone to Egypt twice in the period that they waited. But they finally had to say, look, hey, Dad, Benjamin's got to come with us. We got to get some more food. The only way we're going to get him is to go back. And they let their brother languish in prison in Egypt. Nobody ever talks about Simon, Simeon, Shimon. Nobody ever talks about him. But he's there languishing. I kind of feel bad for him. Don't you?
It says in Joshua that he was treated well and took care of while he was in prison.
Okay. I'm sure he was. I'm sure he was not put in there with the regular rascals.
What blows my mind is they couldn't.
You don't have to use the communal bucket. You can have a bucket in your own place.
Yeah, if he had him there for 7 months, what blows my mind is they never recognized him. I don't know if God put a veil over their eyes or what, but I mean, his appearance must have really changed from when he was in Israel years ago.
When he was in prison,
Yeah.
he had his beard. He probably looked more like John the Baptist. But it said before he brought to the Pharaoh, he was shaved, Egyptian style.
Yeah, but didn't you know your brother's
And-
face? I mean,
They hadn't
No, 'cause
seen
you're
him
not
in like
expecting
20
it.
years.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at my, between my mom posted a baby picture for my birthday on her Facebook, and the way I look now, I kind of look different. Hairline's
Yeah,
about the
but,
same, but
he was a man when he, young boy, I thought he was like in his 20s. Well, I guess yeah.
the ancient Egyptians shaved all their hair because of lice. I mean, so
You know, the eyeliner.
they put eyeliner on. Sometimes they even tattooed those eyeliners. So if you go over with me over to Genesis chapter 43 and go down to verse 23, and it says, and he said, peace be to you, fear not. Your Elohim and the Elohim of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had put your money. That's in the King James. And this is the servant. This is Joseph's servant speaking to them. And then it says, and he brought Simeon out unto them. So where was he? Simeon. He brought Simeon out to them. So what is the root meaning of Simeon? Does anybody have any idea? How about the same word that shares the root for Shema? It also is the root for Shem, so which means name, but Simeon is related to that word because he was called Simeon because God hears. And so therefore, is there not something that's connected with all of the things that why was he separated out? Maybe he was put into the penthouse of the prison. Maybe he was, he had plenty of food to eat while he was there. He was well taken care of. He was just not free to walk around. But ultimately, but what we have is that, and they brought him out, relating to the very fact that God hears. What did God hear? Was there something more to Joseph's story that the Father's revealing through Simeon being brought out of the pit, out of prison, and it was Simeon, Shimon, that was the one, because he's expressing that God heard Joseph and brought him out. So as God hears, he brings this brother out, showing this in a parable sense, Joseph's being thrown unjustly into prison, into a pit twice. And this is being revealed right here. Okay, what were you going to say, Twyla? And then Daryl, you had some? Okay.
Nothing that Simeon was probably treated like a hostage instead of a prisoner.
A hostage as opposed to a prisoner, okay?
I was just gonna say that there was gossip in prison, and I'm sure he heard it all.
All those
Joseph and all
lifers, right?
Yep.
It could very well be that except he was Hebrew. Did he speak Egyptian?
Well, he might have, that's the only way.
But he might have gotten a pretty good dose of it pretty quick. Yeah.
Well, his wife, she learned things from her too. And what was she?
What's that?
Never mind.
What do you mean?
Joseph probably heard a lot of things from his wife, and his wife was one of them. So, he had a skewed view, but he always kept Yah as his main goal. So,
Yeah. And you could also say that what was it about the brothers What were they wanting?
Yes.
I mean, they really, they were wanting this thing to be resolved. I mean, they left and they had their money, and they took it back, and it's like, why do we have this conflict? All we wanted to do is buy some grain and go home. And yet now we have all these things taking place. Don't you think they're crying out?
They knew something.
And to see their father grieving like he was? Don't you think that but bringing him out by the meaning of his name is that there's answers to prayers and you're in the middle of it.
Mhm.
I mean, we haven't seen the fulfillment of it yet. That's next week's Torah portion. But there's answers that are taking place that are much bigger.
Right, over our heads sometimes.
Yeah. But the thing is, along the way, isn't it good of the Father to kind of reveal to us that we're on the right track?
Well, he's revealing mysteries right now. I mean, come on.
As we started talking about dreams,
Yes.
and Rick was talking about dreams that God gives us that we see like they're so real, and then we see them fulfilled, and we see these different things. God is really speaking to us to let us know that he hears us. And we might stumble, and we might feel like, yeah, maybe we did go down the wrong rabbit hole, and we saw Alice, and we had to get out of there. But it was just a distraction, because we learned something in that experience. Because when we came out, and you're like, what? Alice in Wonderland? You know, the rabbit hole?
That was good. I like that, yeah.
It's not Alice Cooper or anything like that, but okay. All right. I had to explain it.
I got it.
Oh my goodness. We're out of time. We're having so much fun in these rabbit holes. So, but the very fact that he's speaking to us all along the way is that maybe we haven't even seen the fulfillment of it. Maybe every single person that has left Life of Worship that are supposed to still be here because we started following, keeping Shabbat and keeping the feast days, and we didn't put a Christmas tree on our stage anymore and hang up those wreaths around the building, just because we didn't do that anymore, and they abandoned us, feeling that we abandoned them in their traditions. But we really believe that the process for them is going to come around as well. Do you know, by the way? And so if someone were to listen on Facebook and they say, well, what are they talking about here at Life of Worship nowadays? Well, maybe they're listening right now and they watched the whole Torah portion, that perhaps, because I invited everybody that's on our Facebook, on our 2 Facebook pages, so that they will, then maybe they'll have an inkling, and maybe they'll say, you know what? Maybe we're not off our rocker so much anymore. That really makes a lot of sense. So I pray that they do. And because our journeys required the journey for us to be on, that we will hear Shema, and we'll listen, and something will open up, and we're like, you know what? Okay, well, there's a whole nother family out there, like we have discovered, that they didn't stay with us. They're able to join us and with no condemnation. All right. Any other thoughts before we get done?
So what was Joseph's Egyptian name?
I can't remember.
It's Zaphanath Paneah.
Yes.
Zaphanath Paneah. It's a decipherer of secrets, one who provides the bread of life. Yeah, those
Didn't
are.
I say that like on Tuesday, on Monday program?
I think you did. So if you're listening to the Torah portion, that's going to come out later on Lamb Network TV. It'll be in today's Torah portion online on Lamb. So
Pastor, I see Torah here and there. It's coming out at Chuck Pierce's church, which I had it. I didn't ever take him completely off, so I went in there the other day. Wow, he bought it in more and more, but it's like he's still having that Sunday thing, but he's bringing in and talking things of the Torah.
He always did. It's
But
just
he's even
that
more so now.
Yeah, it's just okay. I tested when I went in there. I went and asked them about food laws and stuff, and where would they, and they compromised on that, and I was like,
But that's what I'm saying. Now he's even, he's come a long ways from back then, because when did you see him?
The last time I went to GOZ was 15.
Yeah. So it's been a while.
That's
He's
what-
got Torah sitting
water
out.
under the bridge.
Yeah, he's got Torah sitting out. He's talking Torah.
Like
In
you
there.
said, he's still doing Sunday.
Yeah,
So-
that's his own.
So you have
fallback.
to, yeah, there's a certain point in time that one has to break.
Yes,
with
but
the
I'm just
empire.
saying, that's an example of how the Lord's popping Torah out here and there.
Yeah.
You know,
But it's just like us. What we are moving into right now is no different than we are literally breaking ground. And the potential, I pray this doesn't happen, but the potential, people don't like change
that's right.
and they like to stick with their tradition.
That's right.
And the tradition is the Hillel calendar or the sighted moon calendar.
Is wrong.
And we can actually, people potentially can say, well, they're way off.
And
I'm
they
sorry,
will.
the evidence is overwhelming in my opinion.
It is very overwhelming.
It's like,
But it takes-
you're closed and you're not willing.
Right. You're
And
unteachable.
you're still keeping tradition. Therefore, according to the scrolls and all the history, you're a son of darkness
Yes.
versus a son of light. Even if they're following Torah, they're still marked as sons of darkness.
Yes.
And so, and that's why,
Yeah.
so that also comes up. Why is there a great tribulation? Because it's the last ditch effort to weed out the compromise, the sin, the
Yes.
perversion, whatever, the wrong belief system. It's one last ditch effort that the Father has in order to get his people ready.
And if you look at the letters to the congregations, they're not churches, the congregations, all the symbolism, you've heard me say this before, is Hebraic symbolism. He wasn't talking.
That's good. That's good.
In Revelation.
Oh, yeah.
In Revelation, all the symbolism is Hebraic symbolism. He wasn't addressing the church on Sunday. He was addressing his Torah churches that are full of compromise. See, the tribulation is one last chance to get them shaken up so they can become pure before.
That's when, what we were talking about earlier, the people that are in church and some of them, that's when they're gonna have their chance, right? They're just what she said. They'll either jump in the boat with us or they won't. Brenda?
So, sorry, I just
Well-
come here on the tail end and.
So it's all good.
Woo.
Well, great discussion today. We need to close in prayer because I think we forgot to open in prayer. We just jumped right in, didn't we? So let's close in prayer and we'll be dismissed. So everybody that's online, join us again at 3 p.m. Central as we'll have time praise and worship followed by, we're going to continue with that series that Sandi has been bringing us and we've been discussing. It's so
really good
good.
today.
Really, really good. I'm looking forward to it. So Father, we just bless you and we honor you and we thank you for the gathering, the discussion that your Spirit just reveals to us and speaks to us about so that we can explore possibilities, potentials, establish and reestablish, but also to see your hand and Father, to reveal things about ourselves so that we can continue to be transformed into your likeness and your image. And so, Father, we just ask you continue to open our eyes, give us ears to hear and be able to see those things and understand and then to walk it out according to the revelation that you give us. And we just bless you and we honor you for it in the name of Yeshua.